Welcome to The Exchange. Today is October 25th, and today we talk about DOGE activity during government shutdown and the impact on IT projects and acquisition workforce. Let's focus on a select set of agencies for this exchange. We'll review how DOGE and the shutdown is impacting the Department of War, Health and Human Services, Veterans Affairs, and Homeland Security. Federal IT leaders need measurable outcomes during funding uncertainty. Three critical achievements emerge through phased implementation. First, restore IT modernization momentum within the first implementation wave. This requires strategic resource reallocation and contractor engagement protocols. The focus is identifying which projects continue using available funding authorities versus which must pause. Second, reduce acquisition workforce disruption by establishing continuity plans across subsequent deployment phases. Document essential functions. Maintain communication channels. Protect institutional knowledge even as staff face furloughs or reduction actions. Third, protect mission-critical systems through prioritized resource allocation during extended funding lapses. Cybersecurity monitoring cannot pause. Essential infrastructure requires continuous protection. These outcomes use phased language deliberately. Congressional appropriations remain uncertain. Rigid timelines become obsolete within days. Sequential implementation waves adapt to evolving circumstances. Wave 1 actions begin immediately with existing authorities. Subsequent waves activate as conditions permit. This acknowledges federal reality. You must deliver mission-critical capabilities regardless of appropriation status. Success depends on using whatever legal authorities and funding sources remain available during funding disruptions. October 25, 2025 marks day 25 of the federal government shutdown. This differs fundamentally from previous funding lapses. The Department of Government Efficiency maintains all 45 White House staff working without furloughs. 1/3 of other White House personnel were sent home. This selective pattern extends beyond executive offices. Over 4,200 federal employees across 7 agencies received reduction in force notices on October 11th. These represent permanent eliminations, not temporary furloughs. A federal judge paused these actions at more than 30 agencies, creating ongoing legal uncertainty. The War Department shifted $8 billion from research and development accounts to military payroll. This bypassed normal congressional reprogramming authority and will impact ongoing development programs. Non-essential IT modernization projects stalled across agencies. The General Services Administration, GSA, Federal Acquisition Service furloughed staff funded through the Acquisition Services Fund. These positions normally remain exempt because they operate on revolving funds, not annual appropriations. For IT executives and acquisition professionals supporting the War Department, HHS, VA, and DHS missions, this environment demands immediate strategic action. IT modernization faces systematic disruption. Timothy Amerson, former acting Chief Information Security Officer with a major federal agency and current strategic advisor at GuidePoint Security, analyzes the immediate impact. Non-essential IT modernization projects have stalled. This creates backlogs in infrastructure upgrades, cloud migrations, and system updates. Each delay day compounds legacy system challenges and increases future costs. Contractors face payment delays, threatening workforce retention. Federal agencies lose digital transformation momentum during a critical period for AI integration, quantum computing preparation, and evolving cybersecurity threats. Vulnerability analysts, incident responders, and modernization staff are among the first affected. This erodes resilience and slows progress toward transformation goals. For the War Department, the $8 billion shift from research and development funding will impact ongoing programs. The full scope remains undisclosed. The Small Business Innovation Research Program, SBIR, requires reauthorization and cannot award new contracts until congressional action. Defense Production Act provisions expired September 20, 2025, affecting contracts dependent on that authority. These disruptions threaten the technology foundation federal missions require Federal IT executives need structured approaches for funding uncertainty. Matora Solutions' I4 framework provides a systematic methodology through 4 integrated components. First, Insights involves assessing current project portfolios against shutdown risk factors and funding source stability. Distinguish between carryover appropriations, user fees, and unfunded fiscal year 2026 obligations. Second, Impact requires quantifying disruption costs. These include delayed milestones, contractor retention risks, and security vulnerability windows. Document everything for potential cost recovery actions. Third, Inspecting means monitoring ongoing projects for early warning signs of critical failures. Identify mission-essential functions requiring protection. Maintain skeleton crews for vulnerability management despite resource constraints. Fourth, Implementing involves executing phased contingency plans that preserve core capabilities while positioning for rapid restart when funding resumes. This framework recognizes that federal IT leaders cannot simply pause operations. Mission-critical systems require continuous protection. Cybersecurity threats observe no shutdowns. The I4 framework balances immediate risk mitigation with strategic positioning for recovery. It uses phased implementation waves adapted to evolving circumstances rather than rigid timelines. War Department IT projects face complex landscapes during this shutdown. The War Department designated several activities as high priority. These include operations securing the southern border, Middle East operations, depot maintenance, shipbuilding, and critical munitions production. IT projects supporting these missions continue. Everything else faces indefinite delays. The $8 billion redirection from research and development accounts to military payroll will affect ongoing development programs. The War Department has not disclosed which specific initiatives will be impacted. The Small Business Innovation Research Program, SBIR, is designed to attract innovative small businesses to defense solutions. It required reauthorization by September 30, 2025. Without reauthorization, no new awards can be granted. This limits new entrants to the defense industrial base, particularly those with emerging or dual-use technologies. Existing contracts funded by fiscal year 2025 appropriations continue. New fiscal year 2026 obligations cannot proceed. Work continuation depends on contract type, funding year, the War Department priority designation, and the availability of government staff to oversee execution. War Department contractors and IT service providers must understand these distinctions for workforce planning and cash flow management. Healthcare agencies face divergent shutdown impacts. At Health and Human Services, HHS, 41% of the 80,000-person workforce is furloughed. Between 1,100 and 1,200 employees at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Health Resources and Services Administration, and the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality received reduction in force, or RIF notices. The FDA continues work funded by user fees. Drug and biologic reviews proceed if fees were paid and applications are on file. However, no new submissions requiring user fees will be accepted during the shutdown. Safety monitoring, shortage mitigation, and recall work continue as life safety priorities. The Veterans Affairs Department, VA, retained 97% of its workforce. Medical facilities and benefits processing continue without interruption. However, the VA Electronic Health Record, EHR modernization faces compounding challenges. Earlier in 2025, VA terminated contracts with 6 service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, SDVOSBs, supporting the EHR implementation. These contractors have already laid off staff. The Oracle Cerner system has experienced 826 major performance incidents since the 2020 Spokane launch. Some incidents have been linked to patient harm. Even with the planned 2026 deployment schedule, 94% of VA medical centers will still use the legacy Vista system. This is 8 years into the modernization contract. The Department of Homeland Security continues border security operations and critical infrastructure protection, but with significant workforce stress. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency initiated reductions in force. The 40,000 active duty Coast Guard members continue working without pay. They are unable to file for interim financial support. During the 2019 shutdown, Coast Guard members required assistance for basic needs, including shelter, food, and medical expenses. Border agents also work without pay. This raises productivity concerns from financial uncertainty. The acquisition workforce faces unprecedented disruption. The General Services Administration, GSA, Federal Acquisition Service furloughed staff funded through the Acquisition Services Fund. This is a revolving fund from fees GSA charges other agencies for services. These positions normally remain exempt from shutdowns because they do not depend on annual appropriations. GSA is finalizing phased furloughs that would send additional waves of employees home if the shutdown extends beyond early November. Federal contractors cannot receive payments for unfunded fiscal year 2026 work. They face stop work orders, workforce retention challenges, and cash flow crises. Service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, SDVOSBs, are disproportionately affected. Federal IT executives need phased implementation strategies that adapt to uncertain funding timelines. Wave 1 focuses on immediate stabilization. Identify mission-critical IT functions and ensure the exception status documentation is complete. Engage contractors on retention strategies. Document all shutdown impacts meticulously. Establish direct communication protocols with contracting officers who may themselves be furloughed or working remotely. Wave 2 involves resource protection. Prioritize spending of user fees, carryover appropriations, and other non-lapsed funding sources for essential modernization. Implement minimum viable operations for cybersecurity monitoring. Develop comprehensive cost recovery documentation for potential post-shutdown claims. Wave 3 prepares for restart. Create rapid restart procedures for stalled projects. Assess contractor availability after extended pauses, as some may have deployed staff to other work. Update project timelines and budget requirements based on actual delay impacts. Wave 4 achieves full recovery. Resume modernization initiatives with updated risk profiles reflecting lessons learned. Implement improved contingency planning for future disruptions. Restore acquisition workforce capacity through strategic hiring where legal authorities permit. This phased approach recognizes that recovery is a process, not an event. 4 critical actions protect IT investments during funding uncertainty. First, contract review. Verify funding sources for all active contracts. Distinguish between fiscal year 2025 carryover appropriations and unfunded fiscal year 2026 obligations. Contracts funded by prior year money can continue. Work for the new fiscal year 2026 cannot begin without appropriations. Understanding this distinction determines which projects proceed and which pause. Second, workforce continuity. Document essential functions requiring contractor support. Establish retention agreements where legally permissible. Some contractors may be able to continue work on non-lapsed funding sources. Others face immediate stop work orders. Third, security posture. Maintain skeleton crews for vulnerability monitoring. Prioritize patch management for critical systems using available funding. Cybersecurity cannot pause even when appropriations lapse. Use every available funding authority to maintain minimum viable security operations. Fourth, stakeholder communication. Provide regular updates to OMB agency leadership and congressional staff on shutdown impacts to mission-critical systems. Document how funding lapses affect essential capabilities. This creates the record needed for future appropriations discussions and potential equitable adjustments to contracts affected by government-caused delays. The 2018 to 2019 federal government shutdown lasted 35 days, the longest in American history. That shutdown created widespread contractor payment delays and project backlogs. Furloughed civilian employees eventually received back pay through congressional action. No permanent workforce reductions occurred. The current shutdown differs in fundamental ways. The administration is using this funding lapse as an opportunity for permanent reductions in force. over 4,200 employees received RIF notices before federal courts intervened. DOJ staff remain exempt from furloughs, while other White House functions face staffing reductions. The War Department unilaterally redirected $8 billion without congressional reprogramming approval. Federal courts are actively blocking RIF implementation at more than 30 agencies. The acquisition workforce faces furloughs despite non-appropriated funding sources. This represents unprecedented use of funding lapses for workforce restructuring. Previous shutdowns were temporary disruptions with the expectation of restoration. This shutdown combines funding uncertainty with structural workforce changes and unilateral executive actions. Federal IT executives must recognize that this environment differs from past experiences. Traditional shutdown playbooks require updating. The legal landscape remains uncertain. Documentation of all impacts becomes even more critical for potential future claims and appropriations justifications. Strategic positioning for federal IT leaders requires 6 immediate actions. First, engage legal counsel on contract rights and potential equitable adjustments. Government-caused delays may justify contract modifications and cost recovery. Second, establish direct communication with DOJ representatives if agency-specific efficiency reviews are underway. Understanding their priorities and timelines helps position essential IT functions favorably. Third, document all costs associated with work stoppages for potential cost recovery. Track labor inefficiencies, ramp down and ramp up costs, storage expenses, and opportunity costs. Fourth, prioritize cybersecurity and mission-critical operations using all available funding authorities. Explore user fees, revolving funds, prior year appropriations, and other non-lapsed funding sources. Fifth, develop alternative funding strategies for essential work. Some IT modernization may qualify for exception as mission-critical. Build the justification now. Sixth, prepare for compressed timelines and increased costs when the government reopens. Contractors may have reduced availability. Supply chains may face disruptions. Costs typically increase after extended shutdowns. Budget accordingly. These actions position your organization to protect essential capabilities during the shutdown, while enabling rapid recovery when appropriations resume. Documentation created now becomes the foundation for future funding requests and contract adjustments. This analysis draws from authoritative sources published during the current shutdown. The Register reported on IT modernization impacts on October 1, 2025. Breaking Defense covered the Pentagon's $8 billion funding shift on October 20, 2025. Bloomberg government documented DOJ staff exemptions on October 3, 2025. Government executive analyzed shutdown layoffs affecting 4,200 employees on October 11, 2025. The Center for Strategic and International Studies published 2 analyses: industrial base impacts on October 10 and defense funding implications on October 2, 2025. Federal News Network reported acquisition workforce furloughs on October 3, 2025. Additional sources include HR Policy Association contractor guidance and Federal News Network VA EHR coverage from March 2025. For additional resources on federal IT continuity planning and independent verification and validation services, contact Matora Solutions. Complete source citations and working URLs are available in the presentation materials. All statistics and claims are documented with verifiable sources. Thank you again for joining this session of The Exchange. Until next time, inspect what you expect.